Welcome to our fourth reaccreditation audit exit briefing. Some of you have been through all four, and I would like to, some were at the entrance, but most of you were not, so I would like to reintroduce the auditors that have been with us all week. We have Chairperson Nancy Kuntz-Dobbs, and we have Dan McGehee and Ken Berger. Dan is from, are you all going to do a little bit of an introduction? Well, Nancy then is from Arkansas, Ken is from South Carolina, Dan is from South Carolina, and Ken is from Iowa. And they have many, many, many years of experience. All three are retired, and I had some conversation. No. But they've got lots of years of experience, most of it institutional, so they really can relate to our operations. So anyway, I will turn this over at this point to give the outcome of this year's audit.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. This is always the best part of the audit. You have to start so you can begin, and we did that Monday morning with the tour and looking at the files. And so I am so ready to give you your score. Today is September the 12th, 2012. This is the exit meeting for the reaccreditation audit of the Charles E. Bill Johnson Correctional Center in Alva, Oklahoma. The audit team is Nancy Kuntz-Dobbs, Chair, Ken Berger, Member, and Dan McGee, Member. The standards that we looked at today, or this week, included mandatory and non-mandatory standards. Of the 61 mandatory standards, you were not applicable to 4 of those. Those were all in the medical area. So we scored you on 57 mandatory standards, and you got every one of those. You were 100% in your mandatory standards. There are 468 non-mandatory standards. We found this facility to not be applicable to 36 of those. The larger majority of those standards included, like, you have no females, you do not have any industry programs or youthful offenders, and you're not a reception center. So that left 432 for us to look at and to score you. Of those 432, we found you to be non-compliant in 2. Both of those had to do with your physical plant, that you do not have anything to do, or you cannot help it. So that gave us you a score of 99.53%. Excellent. The section of the standards that I audited was medical. And by trade, I am not a medical person, but I can audit medical files. The files were excellent. I appreciate Tisha and everyone else who helped put those files together. The medical files, where are my medical people? There you are. Very good. The mandatories were very good, and then the non-mandatories followed right behind them. I enjoyed my tour of the medical and checked sharps. You check and count sharps and tools so many times during the day that I actually just observed that going on and how thorough you were. So I appreciate the medical and how much that got really no medical complaints. I talked to a young man last night who had some places taken off of his face, some sort of blemish, I don't know exactly what, but he said the doctor did it right in the office. I thought maybe he would have to go to another facility to have that done, but his face was just clear, and he pointed to the places where they were, and he appreciated that medical care. And there were no medical concerns to speak of at all. Everything was very positive. So I appreciate the time that I had spent here. The hospitality was really good. From Sunday night until the wonderful noodle dish that was prepared for us. Appreciate the fun times we had, the laughs, getting caught up with people that we knew. So thank you so much for such a positive visit.
I had the first third of the manual. I'm Dan McGee again. I had the first third of the manual. I had administrative, fiscal, personnel, training and staff development, case records, information systems and research, volunteers, and physical plant. I guess the first area I want to comment on is the physical plant. You know, in in corrections years, this is not a very old facility, but yet 17 years can show some age. And in walking through your facility, we saw some things that did show some age, but we saw some other things that were very well maintained and cleaned and kept up. It appears to me that you're trying to take care of business, and we all know the devil's in the detail, and I think the detail is pretty much getting done here. Caution you about a few things. Look at the seals on your refrigeration units. They're fine, but that's something that needs to be maintained over time. One of the things that I've learned as an auditor, and I've done a lot of these since 1985. I know I don't look that old. But one of the things that I've learned as I go through looking for cleanliness kinds of things, when you look at things like mop buckets and wet floor signs, when they're clean and maintained, you know what? The rest of the stuff usually is too. And you look at the seals on the refrigeration units, if they're clean, guess what? The dishes and the pots and pans usually are too. Not always, but usually they are. So it's things like that y'all seem to be on top of, and I commend you for that. You've got some challenges with the expansion now, with the fencing and the building coming in. You don't know exactly who's going to be in there, or what's going to be in there, or how that's going to fit. And I know there's a little bit of anxiety with that, but there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to handle it just as well as you have the last 17 years with the offenders that you have here. On the personnel side, it's my understanding from reviewing the documentation and talking with many of you that in 2010 you had furlough days to take as employees. Some of you had 12, one a month. Some of you had 2 a month, depending on your classification. You haven't had a raise in over 6 years. The oil field is hiring now most anybody, and the entry level, as I understand it, can be $30 to $35 per hour. That's a little bit higher than the Department of Corrections is paying. But what we found in reality was camaraderie among you that has really impressed us. You have said to me, we care about each other, we take care of each other. There are examples of that over the last 3 years, and I'm not going to go there, but you know what I'm talking about, where you've done it, and you've proved it to each other. The laughter when we came out of the conference room that was in here, I wasn't quite sure what kind of a gathering we were going to. But you're happy, you get along. No, you don't like everything about what you do, and you certainly don't like everything about your paycheck. But what you told me was you have a warden who knows that, and she tries to do everything she can to make it better for you as an employee in a working environment. And many of you told me that you've got a director who is also out there fighting for you in state government. As a matter of fact, in today's Oklahoman, there is an article, Corrections Director sees pay raises as top priority. And the article begins, Oklahoma Department of Corrections Director Justin Jones said employee pay raises will be his top priority in this legislative session. It is out of necessity, he said. Well, then, you know, he may not be successful. But if he doesn't ask, the answer is certainly going to be no. So I commend him on your behalf to be out there cheering for you, trying to get attention for you so that you can retain all of you and hire good employees who won't go to the oil field and who will work here. We're all living in tight times, and we see that every day on the news and hear examples of that, and people who've lost their jobs and how many people have been looking for jobs for over what period of time. If you pay any attention to the presidential primary, that's all you've heard through 2 political conventions. So while we're all aware of all of that, you're really trying to make do with the situation here in the very best way that you can, and I commend the warden and all of you for that. I know it takes good leadership, but it also takes good followers for that to happen. I've got a cheerlead for Mary Beth a minute. There's so much documentation in that business office, and I know those of you who have purchased stuff know that, but I just have to point that out because she has to keep backups to all the originals she sent to Oklahoma City, and well, you know how it goes, but one of the things that kind of blew me away was looking at the fiscal audits that you've had here the last few years. You know, there was one exception in there, and it was a check that cleared the treasurer's office with a signature, but it didn't have 2 signatures as required. And while that is an error, my God, she writes 1,500 checks a month. So if that's all you can find in the business office, things are pretty good over there, okay? So I commend you for that operation, I really do. Records, I'm not used to seeing in a large state system all the computations being done here. But I was kind of blown away in that office this morning as I talked to the employees, one of whom is acting and one of whom is leaving next week because she's going to the elementary school. And I'm sure there's stress there, Ms. Sheik, but I'm sure it's going to be a little bit less stress than you've got in that office. But all the time computations are done in there for all the releases that you have every month. And the auditor from Oklahoma City is in there today, too, checking to make sure that everything's been done right. And I happened to ask the question, well, when is the last time you released somebody early? Well, they look at me like I had said a bad thing. And they said, nobody could remember. And that's commendable because you have a lot of releases every month, a lot of turnover going on, lots of credits to enter to compute the time. And wow, I was really impressed by that, and I commend the employees in there doing that work. Training, you do a lot of training here. We had some conversations yesterday and some suggestions about some things in the future for training. I won't beat a dead horse there, but thank you, the training council. Thank all of you employees for getting all of your training. That's something that I could clearly see is done in all the reports. There's a lot of good done in that area, and I commend you for that as well. We came back last night and were on the compound for a while and then attended the third shift briefing at 10, and I was really impressed every time I was inside about your offenders, your trainees as you call them. They were very respectful from what I observed. I know that's not always the case, but they were to me and they were around us. And I guess one of the things that impressed me a lot last night after I left here and had time to think and reflect back on it after the young man that I spoke with at length in a private office for about 20 minutes, it just reiterated to me what a powerful position each of you has. You're working with young men here, and their future's ahead of them. And I'm not sure what got them here, and a lot of it we probably don't want to know. But you've got an opportunity to make a huge difference in the life of a young man that if it's ever going to turn around, now's the time. And that's a very powerful position to have. I commend each of you for that, and I wish you each the best of luck as you continue your career in the Department of Corrections. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Again, my name is Ken Berger from Iowa, and for those of you who were not here at the opening, this is my second visit to Oklahoma. I was here several years ago and was very pleased with the audit process and what I saw in the state of Oklahoma. So when I got word that I was coming back to Oklahoma, I was really looking forward to it because of the good experience that I had last time, and I have to say that experience was repeated this time. My areas that I was responsible for were security and control. And this talks about inmate counts, contraband, security matters, your flammable, toxic and caustic materials, emergency plans, administrative segregation, and a list of others. You folks do a very good job in your security department. I was fortunate to spend time with your security director and some of his staff, and I had a very pleasant experience doing that. You have a very good security operation here. The residents tell me they feel safe, they're treated appropriately by staff, and they like doing time at this facility. They also like the idea of the treatment programs here. That was another area that I reviewed and had an opportunity this morning to sit in on 3 of the treatment groups in session. And these individuals that I observed were certainly dedicated in what they were doing. I was able to spend about 15 minutes or 20 minutes in each of the programs. And the residents in there were taking part. There was a lot of interaction, a lot of healthy discussion. And those aren't easy jobs for these folks, and I realize it, but they were doing a good job with the population, and they were getting them to interact and to learn something over the whole process that they were doing. You know, you're dealing with a very tough population here at this prison. Young offenders sometimes can be the toughest in the business, and I've been in the business for about 36 years before I retired, and in my career I did work in an institution that dealt with more of your youthful population, and they get pretty creative and pretty challenging sometimes, as you folks know better than I. And in many ways, they're a tougher population to deal with than an inmate in maximum security. Maximum folks have been around a long time, they've tested the waters, they know the do's and the don'ts, and they pretty much settle in and do what they're supposed to do. But that's not true with this younger population that you're dealing with. So you folks are doing a good job in dealing with the youthful folks that you have here. The care of the institution, as Dan was saying, you folks have done a very good job in maintaining the facility that you have here. And as auditors, when you come into a facility, you can tell pretty quickly what they cleaned up for your purpose and what the day-to-day expectation is. And it's obvious to me as you walk through the facility, we could come back a year from now unannounced and we would see the facility in the same shape that we're seeing it today as we're leaving. You take pride in the facility, you ensure that it's a clean environment for your staff and also for the offenders that are here at the institution. And you know, that means a lot, not only to staff, but to offenders. They like to live in an environment that is clean and healthy, and you folks certainly have created that. AdSeg, I was in the AdSeg unit with your security chief here, and you folks do a nice job in dealing with that population in AdSeg, and of course that's the worst of the worst that you have here. But even in there, it was well maintained. When I was in there on 3 different occasions, and each time I was in there, it was relatively quiet. There were no big issues. I even talked to a couple of the offenders when I was in there, and they seemed somewhat reasonable when I was there. Usually when I go in AdSeg, I get called everything except the staff person or the warden or whatever your position is, and that didn't happen to me here. So I thought that was a success. I guess in closing, I'd just like to say thanks for the great hospitality that you folks provided while we were here. You certainly made us feel welcome at home. When I talked with both staff and residents, I didn't get any feeling that anybody was trying to hide anything from me. They were very open, they were very honest, and as auditors, that's what we really appreciate when you go into a facility, when people are open and are honest in the interaction. So, again, thanks for everything. I've had another good experience in Oklahoma that I'm going to take back with me. And good thanks again for those wonderful noodles you served us here about an hour ago.
You're welcome.
I just have just a little more. The process does not stop here. The way that it continues is I'll complete the report, send it to ACA, then they send it out back to the warden and to Penny, and then it'll be your decision how you want to approach the 2 non-mandatory standards that were missed, perhaps a waiver, whatever you decide to do. And then will you be going to Houston or someone? Penny, most likely, the next ACA conference meeting where the commission is the one who decides whether you're accredited. We're only the eyes and the ears. Oh, we are the eyes and the ears, not just only the eyes and ears for the commission. So I want to write a report that's very reflective so that they can understand your facility and you not have to explain so very much about it. And it's at that decision, which would be in January 2013 in Houston, that where you're actually reaccredited. So that's the process from here, and I'm sure that at the commission hearing, everything will be just fine.
When we met before, I really want to thank all the members of our panel. Again, most of you have been through audits before, and those of you that did get the opportunity to visit with them, this was a very relaxed audit, and they really made this not an easy audit, but one where I think people really could relax and share what they do, and I really appreciate everything that people do to get ready. Even though we do believe in standards, we all know that we're still going to do that extra, and everybody worked really hard making this a great, successful week. So it really does reflect what I believe each one of you do every day. And, you know, the standards are what make everything that we do make sense. So I think we all believe in the process, and that's why we hope it turned out the way that it did. But, you know, these are just very healthy processes for us to have people who don't know us come in from the outside, fresh set of eyes, so to speak, and, you know, either affirm or not what we think we're doing here. So I believe in the process, and I think these were some of the best auditors that really are in the spirit of what this is about. And I got lots of good ideas and input from you all, and I appreciate that as much as your review of our operations. It's just, you know, the experience that you've shared that will help us hopefully even be better and better. That's our hope. So anyway, thank you for a great week, and staff, outstanding as always. You are the best. I hope you all know the best. It has been a tough year. And we still are doing it right, so I thank you all.